The Russian dictator Vladimir Putin responded to Donald Trump's ultimatum and stated that he is confident of victory in the war against Ukraine. Dictator Putin is confident that the Ukrainian front will collapse in 2 to 3 months, so he can ignore Trump's ultimatum. He believes that it's possible to endure all these sanctions and tariffs for a little while, and then new conditions will emerge on the ground and for negotiations. According to Reuters, such nonsense was told to Putin by the Russian army's general staff, and they said that they are about to capture all 4 Ukrainian regions in the east and south of the country. And then it will be possible to talk about something with Ukraine and Trump. As Reuters writes, Putin believes he is winning, and that's why he looks at American sanctions with skepticism. Sources in the Kremlin also admit that the negotiations in Istanbul are just for show, except for humanitarian issues. Donald Trump understands such a stubborn and insane position, and today he publicly explained how he plans to stop the dictator Putin. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is August 5th. We'll get to everything in order, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave any comment, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, today the Reuters agency, citing sources in the Kremlin, writes that Putin is unlikely to comply with the president's sanctions ultimatum, which expires this Friday, and still aims for the complete capture of 4 regions of Ukraine. Let me remind you, Trump threatened to impose new sanctions against Russia and introduce 100% tariffs on countries buying Russian oil, the largest of which are China and India, if Putin does not agree to a ceasefire in Russia's war against Ukraine. According to 3 sources familiar with the discussions in the Kremlin, Putin's determination to keep going is driven by his belief in Russia's victory and his skepticism that another round of United States sanctions will have any significant impact. After consecutive waves of economic sanctions over 3.5 years of full-scale war against Ukraine. But, as Reuters writes, the Russian dictator does not want to anger Donald Trump and understands that he may be missing his last chance to improve relations with Washington and the West, but his military goals seem more important to him. Putin's goal, as Reuters writes, is to fully capture the Ukrainian regions, specifically Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, and only then begin negotiations for a peace agreement. Supposedly, only after capturing the 4 regions can Putin announce to the Russian masses that the goals of the war have been achieved. Now, I'll give you an interesting quote from Reuters that explains why Trump sharply reduced the deadlines for Putin from 50 days, as you remember, to 10. Quote, according to the first source, the current negotiation process, during which Russian and Ukrainian negotiators have met 3 times since May, is simply an attempt by Moscow to convince Trump that Putin is not rejecting peace. Adding that the negotiations have no real substance except for discussions about humanitarian exchanges, Russia stated that it is seriously committed to achieving a long-term peace in the talks, but the process is complicated due to the sides' positions being too far apart. The demands stated by Moscow include the complete withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from 4 regions and Kyiv's recognition of neutral status and limitation of its armed forces. Ukraine has rejected these demands. And Trump, who has previously praised Putin and promised the prospect of lucrative business deals between Russia and the United States, has recently expressed growing impatience with the Russian dictatorship. He complained about what he called Putin's nonsense and called Russia's relentless bombings of Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities disgusting. The Kremlin stated that it had taken note of Trump's statement but refused to respond to it. After that, Trump decided to supply weapons to Ukraine through European partners. And now, White House Press Secretary Anna Kelly made the following statement, quote, President Trump wants to stop the killing. That's why he's selling American weapons to NATO members and threatening Putin with tough tariffs and sanctions if he doesn't agree to a ceasefire. Nevertheless, the Kremlin claims that Putin is supposedly concerned about the recent deterioration of relations with the United States of America. Putin still holds out hope that Russia can become friends with America again and trade with the West. and he's worried about Donald Trump's irritation. However, Putin does not believe that now is the right time to end the war. According to Reuters sources, the Kremlin is confident that they will eventually be able to capture all 4 regions of Ukraine. And if not, then at least they want to make the most of the Russian army's summer offensive. And here's an important point. According to Blackbird Group, which is a Finnish military analysis center, over the past 3 months, Ukraine has indeed suffered some of the largest territorial losses since the beginning of this year, including 502 square kilometers in July. And so the general staff of the Russian army reported to Putin that the Ukrainian front would definitely collapse in 2 to 3 months, so it's worth waiting a bit longer. But there is another study as well. Russia's recent successes remain relatively insignificant in purely territorial terms. Since the beginning of last year, Russia has captured only 5,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory, which is less than 1% of the country's total area. According to a report by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a think tank based in Washington. Moreover, most analysts, and importantly even Russian military correspondents, admit that Moscow's troops have already become bogged down during the current summer offensive in areas where the terrain and dense urban development give greater advantage to the armed forces of Ukraine. Therefore, further advances have slowed down sharply. On the other hand, the threat of sanctions from Donald Trump was painful and unpleasant, but not catastrophic. After all, the Kremlin still confidently believes that Trump will eventually back down. He will escalate now, but will make concessions on August 8. They say Trump has threatened before, but then didn't take any action or changed his mind. Besides, it's hard to imagine that China would stop buying Russian oil just because Trump told them to, and that his actions could have the opposite effect, actually causing oil prices to rise instead. At least that's what the Kremlin is really hoping for. Although, as a result of previous rounds of sanctions, Russian oil and gas exporters have suffered significant losses in revenue, and direct foreign investment in Russia fell by 63% last year. This is data from the United Nations report on global trade. Now, moving on, Reuters writes, quote, "First, a Russian source noted that Putin, by continuing the conflict, is ignoring proposals from the United States made back in March, in which Washington offered to lift American sanctions in exchange for his agreement to a complete ceasefire. He would recognize Crimea as belonging to Russia, which was annexed from Ukraine in 2014, and would effectively confirm Russia's control over the territory seized by its troops since 2022. The source called this proposal a fantastic opportunity, but noted that stopping a war is much more difficult than starting one. And today Donald Trump apparently finally realized that Putin is a mad creature, some kind of spawn, and that there is no point in negotiating with him as long as he has the opportunity to wage war. According to Trump, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin will want to stop the killing if oil prices drop sharply. Here's a quote from Trump. "Putin will stop killing people if we lower energy prices by another $10 per barrel. He won't have a choice because his equivalent economy is in a dire state." Well, Trump's deadline is already ending on August 8th at the end of this week. Well, let's see his determination to punish Russia. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation. All the links and details on how to do this are in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. I appreciate any support you can provide. That's it for now. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.